first topic of the day. Is our squad as thin as a lot of people say it is? You ready?
Right. Do you know what on this one? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, go. We're starting.
Yeah, do you know what on this one for me, Shawnee? I think, look, when you look in terms of numbers, we've got numbers and we've got bodies, but how many of them actually contribute to the squad? For instance, Hugo Lloris in the squad. Nowhere near it, nowhere near good enough. He's on his way out. Ollie Skip, not good enough. You got Pierre-Emile Højbjerg's future. That's unresolved right now as we speak. Then you go into the likes of Eric Dyer, future unresolved as we speak. Ivan Perisic looks like he's out of here in January. Giovanni Lo Celso, another one where his future is unresolved. I know Spurs saying they're not going to loan him out this January. However, I feel if they get cash for him, I think they'll sell. And you know what other club would wait around 4 years for a player to perform? Fraser Forster, okay, he's a backup goalkeeper. And then you go down the list. Ben Davies, look, I don't think he's good enough personally, but there's many out there that don't. Brandon Austin, Alfie Whiteman, two other players that don't contribute. So in terms of numbers, I think we do have good squad. But there's a lot of bodies there and a lot of players there. Sessegnon is another one that are registered to create this squad that just aren't good enough, that don't contribute to this squad. And there's so many of them where their futures are up in air. I think Postecoglou has tried to extend the strength and depth by bringing through a Donnelly, Feliz, Dorrington, people like that. However, I don't think we're there yet, and I think we need better squad depth, Sean. Where are you at with it, my man?
Look, I think that obviously we're limited by the amount of players you can have in your squad to 25 in terms of just the rules of the Premier League and the foreign quota and the homegrown. But I would actually say, like, I think that every time we go through a miniature injury crisis, you see certain personnel, certain people within the fan base coming out and saying, this is Daniel Levy's fault. Yet again, the squad is so thin. You saw it when we had the catastrophic situation that happened after Chelsea with losing Van der Ven and Maddison, also Romero. And I think that sometimes it's a little bit over-egged. I genuinely do. I understand that you look at Manchester City and you see the quality that they have, two world-class players or two near world-class players in every position. But I just don't necessarily agree that Tottenham, outside of injuries, have a thin squad. I think if you look at, and we're going to talk about versatility and utility in a second in the next topic or one of the next topics, but I do think when you add in the fact that some of our best players are capable of playing in multiple positions, then I think that you have a far more versatile and deeper squad than people currently think. I think when you look at our midfield, for example, and if you're now including Decky as a midfielder because he can play in the 10, and if you were to list in order of quality the amount of midfielders that we have, and you would include Bentancur somewhere at the top, Maddison somewhere at the top, Bissouma somewhere at the top, Decky somewhere at the top, Pape Sarr somewhere at the top, Lo Celso somewhere in the middle, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg and Ollie Skip and Gio Lo Celso are the 5th or 6th, 7th, and 8th quality members of our midfield options. And I don't think that there's many teams that you could look at in the Premier League that would go down to the 6th or 7th or 8th most preferential player in their midfield and have someone of Pierre-Emile Højbjerg's quality. When you look at our midfield line, when you look at our forward line, and you see that obviously right now we're struggling without Perisic and Manor Solomon, but we have 6 or 7 players that on their day are all capable of playing in a multitude of positions. So if you do have injuries to one side, you can take someone from the left and put it on the right. As I said, with the midfielders, you have Lo Celso that can play in the 6, the 8, or sorry, the 8 or the 10. You have a Højbjerg that can play in the 6 or the 8, Bissouma that can play in the 6 or the 8, Maddison that can play in the 8, or sorry, the 10 or on the left. I think that when you compound on the fact that you have so many names that can play in so many different positions, and when you have a frequency of players that where you can get to the lowest levels of it in any particular position and still have a quality name, a quality international player, I just don't believe that our squad is as thin as people say it is.
Do you know what, on the versatility argument, I do hear you. We do have quite a few players that have actually shown their versatility so far this season under Ange Postecoglou. But for me, that sort of shows that Postecoglou will trust the squad depth to a certain degree. But there's still, 4, 5, 6 spots up for grabs right now of players that we can get out and bring more in that don't contribute to the squad to be able to create more squad depth. I'd argue that maybe Ange Postecoglou has done a better job than previous managers by bringing that versatility to players by being able to bring up a couple of youngsters. He is creating that sort of bit of squad depth. But the fact that he's using players out of position and stuff like that, realistically, it's not really that ideal. And then we're also talking about a couple of players. Do they want to be here? Do they not? And I think that reflects in their performances with the likes of Højbjerg and the Celso. You know, one game they can have a good game, the next game they have a shit game. And I think that reflects. I do think, you know, we do need to hit the market again in January and the summer and build out that squad depth. For me, I take your point. I do understand what you're saying. I think Postecoglou has created a deeper squad than what others have. However, it's nowhere near there yet. When you're talking about the likes of Alfie Whiteman, Austin, Lloris, there's 3 squad positions up for grabs already that don't contribute. Dyer, Session, there's 5. If you could ship them out and bring more players in, then I would sit here and say we have a better sort of squad depth. You know, in years gone by, you look at some of the embarrassments that we've suffered because of our squad depth, going out to Middlesbrough in the Cup, Forest in the Cup, losing to NS Moore in Europe, places like that. You know, when we have to rely on squad depth in years gone by, it shows that we don't have it. However, to your point, I do think Postecoglou is making a better go of it in terms of using players out of position, which maybe covers it up a little, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, I'm not making the argument that Tottenham don't need reinforcements. We certainly do.
Yeah.
And I take your point as well, 100%, that if you have players that are of good enough quality, but are they really ready and willing to play second fiddle? And then when they get their minutes, maybe not. I think that's going to be a conversation and a problem for any team that is not playing in Europe that aspires to be, that doesn't also have the credibility of winning trophies, even if you're a squad player. I think some players will tolerate being a squad player if they're confident that they're going to win trophies every year, like at Manchester City, maybe at Liverpool. Whereas I think the rest of us have to find a way to rationalize to them that they're going to play, going to get minutes, and they're a valuable part of the squad, even if they're not playing all the time. Players have got egos. I'd also say that whilst my argument, I think, is fairly strong and rigid for the midfield, I think it's not quite as strong, but still has some validity at the top end of the pitch. I think one more additional high-quality player at the top end of the pitch, and I think we could be maybe 2 if we're getting rid of Perisic, need to replace him as well. But then at the back end, I think we've still got a way to go to be able to have that reinforcement. I think that the argument falls apart in the defense and the centre backs. We really just don't have someone. We need a third choice centre back that is capable of competing for a first team spot. Alongside Romero or Van de Ven, knowing that they're going to be either injured or suspended at some point throughout the season. And I would still make the argument that even though we've got about 4 or 5 players that technically can play left back, after Udogie, the quality drops off pretty significantly. And also a goalkeeper, I think we've got problems there. So I think for half of the squad, for half of the pitch, if you like, I don't think we're anywhere near as thin as people make out. And this when people get frustrated when we got injuries or suspensions that all come at once, and they blame Daniel Levy, I do think it's a bit of a shallow argument. But in the other end of the deeper end of the pitch, the defence and the goalkeepers, I think there's still a long way to go. And I hope that Tottenham can do that, at least get some of that resolved in January.
And that's the thing with this squad. I think you're spot on there in terms of in certain areas, we do have sort of good strength in depth. Now, obviously, people pick some players out, and say, look, I think we can improve here. That's fine. But in terms of bodies in the midfield, in terms of wingers, I think we've got more than enough sort of strength in depth. Yes, we've got injuries in them areas right now, but when they come back, we've got more than enough strength in depth. I think striker, we need another striker. I think left back, I agree with you. After Adoji, I think we need one. And also, I'd like another centre back in here. Look, eventually we will have to do the backup goalkeeper or someone to come in here and compete with Vicario, which is never going to happen, by the way, because we've got the best keeper on the line. But, there's certain areas that we do need to add a bit more strength and depth in. And then I think we can say we've got quality, right throughout that squad. But I do take your point. Midfield, wingers, stuff like that, I don't think you need to touch. But there are certain areas where I do think we need to strengthen for sure.
Just quickly for the last 55 seconds, I think we're on the same sort of page then. Just really, really quickly, Fraser Foster getting a new contract. What message does that send to the goalkeepers that are chomping at the bit behind him? Are they not good enough? I know you like Josh Keeley. Also, how terrifying a prospect is it if you did lose Vicario to an injury at some point in the second half of the season and have to see Fraser Foster play Angeball?
Look, with Fraser Forster, I think he stepped in well in terms of against Fulham, in terms of his shot stopping, but it's his ability on the ball where maybe it could cost you a little. But I understand why Tottenham have done it. Homegrown, experience, And plus, we need to spend bigger money in other positions, not a backup goalkeeper come January or the summer. So I think it's one where we've kicked the can down the road. When it comes to Brandon Austin, his only loan move has been to the MLS. He's 24, 25, not good enough. White Man, his only loan move was out to Sweden. Again, not good enough. And just quickly on Josh Keeley, I watched him in one of the EFL trophy games. Now, in a couple of them, he was very good, but there was one where he's got elements of these games where he still needs to work on. They put corners just in on top of him, and he couldn't deal with it. In the Premier League, that's going to happen against all the bottom teams. So he has some way still to go to progress after watching that.
There you go, mate. I think we pretty much handled that one. Got it all done within about 10 minutes and 30 seconds.
Smashed.
Fairly well covered. I'm pretty impressed. I was wondering how it was going to go for the very first attempt. I think we could talk about that particular conversation in more detail. Maybe it's for a bigger show. But as far as a 10-minute tidbit, let us know in the comments if we covered it. If we're missing something, please let us know if you agree or disagree with the kind of relevant points. And we will continue that conversation.